Hi classmates, I'm John Vincent Season. Our report is Readings in Philippine History, Chapter 5. Chapter 5, Doing History, a guide for students. Our learning objectives are to manifest interest in local history and cultural heritage, to apply historiographical methods in writing the history of one's locality or country, to incorporate technology in the discipline of history, and to appreciate the value of doing history to the present day.
It is enough that we know our history. We must also realize that as agent of social change, we can contribute the narrative of the nation by participating in writing about our past and our present. This chapter focuses on applying the skills we have learned in the previous chapters in writing history. Special attention will be given to doing online research, library or archival research, biographies or life history, and local or oral history. An additional discussion on interacting with history through historical shrines and museums will also help us in appreciating the history of the past as it comes to life through our experiences in visiting and interacting with these learning spaces.
Let us start with the first tool that any student nowadays would use to do research, the internet. It has increasingly become the primary means by which one would find any information that they need. With a single click, students are able to access tons and tons of available information. So much information, in fact, that it would be easy to get lost in all data available. Cyberspace is a great resource for research if you know how to use it properly. Remember that just because information is available does not mean you should just get it and use it away from appropriating something, such as an idea, as your source is considered plagiarism, which is one of the worst crime in academy. Treat anything you find online as a source and use the same historical methods you have learned to analyze the data you get online. My explanation. The topic is all about doing historical research online. In this generation, internet are needed in our daily lives. Internet can research some of information that can help us in our research. This information can be true or false. Cybercrime is dangerous because some of people use internet to discriminate other people. The other type is plagiarism. This is the most common case if you copy of someone's research.
There are websites that you may use to legally download the scanned copies of books and other materials for free, especially those books with expired copyrights and are in public domain. Project Gutenberg is the oldest digital library in the world, founded in 1971. It has more than 50,000 items in its collection, which include many works concerning the Philippines, such as the Doctrina Christiana. The published travelogues of foreigners who visited the Philippines such as Jagor, Dicumin, Bercho, Foreman, and Worcester. Eistencrage biography of Rizal and all volumes of Blair and Robertson's. The Philippine Islands, 1493 to 1898. Another online archive you may use in the Internet Archive. An online library that originally sought to archive web history, but grow later on to provide digital versions of other works. The archive contains 279 billion web pages, 11 million books and texts, 4 million audio recordings, 3 million videos, 1 million images, and 100,000 software programs. Philippine government websites are starting to be enriched with sources that may be used for historical research. especially on laws and other government issuance that may be useful when doing topics of a more contemporary period. Websites of newspapers, magazines, broadcasting stations, and other media outlets usually keep an archive of their article from a particular day. For older issues, you may have to find copies, either digitized or physical copies, in the library. It says here that there are free websites and there is also a book with expired copyrights in public domain that we can use for research. Project Gutenberg, a non-profit organization since 2000 that maintains an electronic library of public domain works that have been digitized or converted into e-books by volunteers and are cheap for download from the organization's website. The project got its start on July 4, 1971 when Michael Hart, a student at the University of Illinois, thus began Project Gutenberg, the oldest digital library. The copyright on any book published before 1923 expired no more than 75 years later, at which point it entered the public domain. Any work published between 1923 and 1977 retains its copyrights for 95 years. Internet Archive is a non-profit library of millions of books, movies, software, music, websites, and more. Internet Archive was founded in 1996 to build an internet library with the purpose of offering permanent access for researchers, historians, and scholars to historical collections that exist in digital format such as internet sites and other cultural digital artifacts. The Internet Archive is an American digital library. In addition to its archiving function, the Archive is an activist organization advocating a free and open internet. The gov.ph or National Government Portal or NGP is a single window uniting all web-based government content to maximize efficiency and provide rapid high-quality service to citizens. On the other hand, the Philippine government is all about laws, government issues that we don't know if this will help in making topics of a more contemporary period. Websites of newspapers, magazines, broadcasting stations, and other media outlets. Here they usually store articles on a specific date for the older issue so that you can find a copy in the library whether it is digitized or physical copies.
Doing historical research in libraries and archives. Research in libraries and archives in the study of history, as these are repositories of primary and secondary sources that allow us to create narratives of the past through accepted methods of historical scholarship. It is imperative for a student to be able to develop an aptitude toward doing research in this venue so as to further develop their skills in historical research. Historic research involves finding, using, and correlating information within primary and secondary sources in order to communicate an understanding of past events. There are some examples of primary sources. Common examples of primary sources include interview transcripts, photographs, novels, paintings, films, historic documents, and official statistics. Anything you directly analyze or use as first-hand evidence can be a primary source, including qualitative or quantitative data that you collected yourself. What are some examples of secondary sources? Common examples of secondary sources include academic books, journal articles, reviews, essays, and textbooks. Anything that summarizes, evaluates, or interprets primary sources can be a secondary source. If a source gives you overview of background information or presents another researcher's ideas on your topic, it is probably a secondary source. Primary and secondary sources. What's the difference? A primary source is a first-hand account of an event that happened, data from a study or an original work. Here are some examples of primary sources: photographs or historical events, new articles, novels, and short stories, autobiographies by historical or famous people, letters and journals, published essay and opinion pieces, original works so far, documentaries except from radio broadcasts and podcasts, data from studies and surveys, poll results, recording of speeches, music and other performances, government documents about specific policies and laws, as in the actual text of an ordinance or law. What is secondary source? Secondary sources are a step removed from primary sources. Essentially, they're sources about primary sources. Secondary sources include essays analyzing novels, works of art, and other original creation, textbooks, passages discussing specific concepts, events, and experiments, biographies of historical and famous people, books about specific events, concept, movements, and works, critical works by academic and professional critics, political commentary. Students of history are usually expected to write historical essays or historical research papers, and this entails the collection of data through primary sources. There are available primary sources on Philippines history online, however, much remains to be digitized, made accessible to the public. Libraries and archives still provide more varieties of sources in different formats, such as books, journals, articles, newspapers, magazines, photographs, and even audio and video recording. Sifting through all the materials available might prove to be a daunting task for the unacquainted. Nowadays, libraries have forgone the tedious and antiquated card cataloging system and have been using the digital version to catalog holding, called the Online Public Access Catalog or OPAC. Sometimes simply the library catalog. In this system, instead of going through each entry on physical index cards, a simply will yield the holdings of the library related to what you are searching for. Search by subject will give you a list of sources, primary and secondary, to aid you in creating preliminary biography that you may later on access physically in the holdings of the library. What is the meaning of Online Public Access Catalog? OPAC stands for Online Public Access Catalog. Is an online database of materials held by a library or group of libraries through which users search a library catalog principally to locate books and other material available at a library.
The catalog lists down all kinds of materials available based on the subject used in the search. This could be books, journals, maps, and other materials that fit what you might be looking for. Do not limit yourself to using books and other published materials when you may be able to utilize other forms of sources. Materials that may be old to be physically handled may also be available in digital form or microfilm. So, many of catalog now lists down all kinds of materials that we use in research, like books, journals, maps, and even newspaper can be accessible in finding information that we need. In addition, since many of sources is now available, it is very important to not limit ourselves in using books and other published materials, especially if we are doing a research, because the more complete information we present, the more it becomes true. The National Library of the Philippines in Ermita, Manila provides a rich treasure trove of materials for the student researcher interested in Philippine history, especially in their Filipiniana section. It is available in Rizaliano Collection, several set of Blair and Robertsons, The Philippine Islands 1493-1898, Rare Filipiniana books, Philippine Presidential Papers, and other materials that are accessible to the public, especially to students. So, in the National Library of the Philippines and EMITA, they provide a rich treasure trove of materials for the student researcher who are interested in Philippine history. In addition, the National Library of the Philippines is also the repository of printed and recorded cultural heritage of the country and other intellectual, literary, and information sources, which means they occur, preserve, and make accessible all significant publications published in the country and unpublished documents such as manuscripts. Research and archives may be a lot more difficult and prove to be advanced, but will provide you with many sources not available in the usual libraries. The National Archives of the Philippines, also in Manila, is an agency of the government mandated to collect, store, preserve, and make available records of the government and other primary sources pertaining to the history and development of the Philippines. Most of the materials here, especially for the year of Spanish colonialism, are in the original language and may not be accessible to college students. But another materials may be useful, and it would be hard to ask assistance from the staff in the archives. So, the research archive is provide us with a lot of sources that not available in the usual libraries. National Archives of the Philippines, also in Manila, is an agency of the government mandated who collect, store, and preserve documents and also records. Besides, the National Archives of the Philippines is the home of about 60 million documents from the century of Spanish rule in the Philippines, the American and Japanese occupation, as well as the Year of Republic. It's also the final repository for the voluminous notarized documents of the country.
Research in archives may be a lot more difficult and prove to be too advanced, but will provide you with many sources not available in the usual libraries. National Archive of the Philippines, also in Manila, is an agency of the government mandated to collect, store, preserve, and make available records of the government and other primary sources pertaining to the history and development of the Philippines. Most of materials here, especially for the years of Spanish colonialism, are in their original language and may not be accessible to college students, but other materials may be useful, and it will not hurt to ask assistance from the staff in the archives. The libraries in the University of the Philippines in Diliman, Quezon City have holdings that could also be useful in research. The collection, particularly in the main library in the Gonzales Hall, are rich in resources, especially the Filipina section, serials, thesis, and dissertation. Other university libraries are also accessible to the public. The Ateneo de Manila University in Quezon City holds the American Historical Collection, a rich source for the American period in the Philippines. The University of Santo Tomas East España, Manila also collections from the 16th century, owning the facts that it's the oldest Catholic university in the country and is historic site it itself.
Libraries and historical archives are regarded as the main repositories for preserving and maintaining historical documents. Their documents may have originated from either primary or secondary source and be maintained in the form of books, page bound together, manuscripts, single page, photos, paintings, video, etc. A source is characterized as primary if it has been created during the period of interest. Historians conducting research systematically examine past events to give an account. Historic research may involve interpretation to recapture the nuances, personalities, and ideas that influence these events in the expected research outcome. To communicate an understanding of past events. In this process, historians employ their scientific knowledge, experience, and intuition to decide which information they will need to find and study during each next step, and subsequently attempt to locate sources that contain this information in the context of a library or historical archive.
I'm Karime Uggia, and today I am going to discuss to you about doing life history. Let us define first what is life history. Life history is an often neglected subdiscipline of history because it is seen as trivial to larger narratives of nations, societies, and civilizations. Yes, because studying life histories is always focused on history of nation and different collectives. However, students of history should realize that the individual is a significant contributor to various historical breakthroughs across periods of time. So I have here a list of importance of the individual in the history. First, individual can make up societies. Individual action can cause large-scale social change. Individual influence can span centuries and generations. And individual can also influence large spaces and many places. So there is given individual examples. First, Jesus Christ. Our sisters and brothers in Christianity believe that Jesus Christ influenced the whole world through faith and religion. And as we observe, Christianity is one of the largest religions in the world. As I mentioned earlier, individual influence can span centuries and generations. And another example is Jose Rizal. Jose Rizal influenced so many Filipinos, and his novel inspired by the radical Filipinos to find the colonizer. And his death was a turning point to have a revolution here in the country. His influence was only limited to the Philippines.
Biographical research in education may be conceived in many different ways. However, typically the topic constitutes the study of a single life, focusing primarily upon an individual who in some way is affiliated with the professional field of education broadly conceived. Other research methodologies are often bundled within the descriptor of biography and include life history writing, oral history, memoir, autobiography, and life narrative. Among the numerous forms of biographical research in education, there are 5 types often noted. First is the scholarly chronicles, next is the intellectual biography, third is the life history writing, fourth is the memoir biography, and lastly, the narrative biography. These orientations may take the form of articles, vignettes, chapters, monographs, and full-length books. One need not draw fine distinctions among these different approaches, however, and each orientation offers particular strength for the presentation of the biographical subjects. Rims are crossed continually as the intent and purpose of the biographer become clearly defined during research processes. Intimately, biographers, while engaged in their research, are constantly examining their interpretative voices as much as the lives of their biographical subjects.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raymond Ramon, and my report is about interacting with history through historical shrines and museums. First of all, what is history? The study of previous events is known as history. People can deduce what happened in the past by examining historical documents and artifacts. There are items that are collected in kits in libraries, archives, and museums for people to study history. And now I'm discussing about historical shrines and museums. There exist venues we can experience history and make these artifacts available to public for viewing to permanent or temporary exhibit. Historical shrines and museums refers to place where relics and memorabilia and other resources pertaining to important people, places, and events in the past are thematically presented and systemically preserved, cataloged, or displayed for public appreciation and education. These venues for living history provide us a certain level of authority and trustworthiness what will impact the way we view the past. Through interacting with artifacts such as a World War II rifle or the clothes of a Filipino hero, we can better imagine the past beyond the mere letter and words we read and painstakingly memorize. Historical shrines and museums serve as portals to the past, but one must also take note that visiting a museum entails preparation. In the course of your study, you are bound to visit one, two, or the site of the sites. Once you know what you will be visiting, it is essential to do a background reading on the place you will visit, so what you may know what to expect and you can situate the importance of the place you will be visiting in the national historical narrative.
Upon arriving on the historical site, one thing you can do is to look for the historical marker. This marker provided by the NHCP provide the basic detail on the what make a certain site historical. Here are the example of historical marker. The historical marker of Fort Santiago and the historical marker of blood compact between Sikutan and Legazpi. Organize your visit to the shrine or the museum because your instruction might be give you some outputs or a worksheet to accomplish while on the site. Maybe may assign you to write on reflection paper that you should represent your own critical evaluation of the site. That's why it's important to spend time reading the caption or text that's posted on the artifact that exhibit on display. Some museum and shrine allow mobile photographer and may even encourage to take selfies while in the site. Take the opportunities to able to retain more of the information being represented by this site so that you will guided one you are the right a paper. Shrine and museum are a lot more interactive now, added by the available technology. Take the chance and participate in these interactive opportunities to expensive history. Watch video, listen to the sound, and enjoy the experience.
It goes on and on and on.